Well, hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Reading Michael Jackson. I am your host, Lena, and I'm so glad to be back here today recording a new episode for you. I recently went on vacation, and so it's actually been weeks since I've recorded. You just didn't know that. So it always feels cool to return to recording and doing this show when the schedule strikes for me to do it again, when I haven't done it in a while. During my time on vacation, I visited Canada. I went to New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island, and I am happy to say I heard Michael Jackson multiple times out in public in various places, and it made me very happy, of course. I never fail to react. I don't know why. It's not like he's still pretty much the most famous person in the world. I just, I still act as if it's a shock to hear him somewhere, and it's always just incredibly delightful. I've also have to say, I had this thought yesterday. Since I've been home, I've been getting a lot done and running a lot of errands and, different appointments and things like that. And so I was driving around, and per a recommendation on the most recent episode of the MJ Cast, I was listening to the audio recording of Michael Jackson's Bad Tour rehearsals, which took place between the 1987 and 1988 legs of the Bad Tour. And apparently there's this 2-hour audio recording of the rehearsals. And Michael is singing live through the whole thing, of course. And he's not always singing, at full strength like he does in his regular concerts. But you can hear him singing and he sounds incredible. And you can hear his little comments in between about anything like, oh, what is that? Or, oh, what do I need to do? Or, oh, do this next time or whatever comments he makes. And I was driving around screaming. And here's the thing. Every once in a while, I'm like, am I ever going to calm down about Michael Jackson? And then I run into something new that I haven't heard before, haven't seen before. And just that alone makes me freak out like a complete psycho. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And I will link that in my episode description as well, so that you can find that video if you want to. It's pretty cool to listen to. I've seen the video footage of that, but I can't say I've listened to the full audio before. The one cool thing though is that there are a lot of full audio recordings from the Bad Tour available online. There are a few different channels. If you follow them, I don't know how these people source this stuff. A while ago, I had talked to a creator who runs a page for rare Bad Tour footage, and he will occasionally upload videos or audio or whatever. And he told me he just like auctions on these things when they sell, and he finds them. And I like blew my mind. And I am so grateful. My husband thinks I'm crazy because he's like, how different could they be? And I'm like, you don't understand. Even the slightest variation of the way he says something when he sings, or a comment he makes, or anything, even the slightest variation will make me excited. So now you know the mindset I'm in today. Let's get into this episode. Okay, so flipping through, it looks like this is a piece called I, You, We. And I'm wondering if this is one of the pieces that when I first read Dancing the Dream a few years ago, I noted as being about a relationship. I don't remember a lot about it, so we will see. And granted, I have read Dancing the Dream a few times before recording this podcast, so we will see what this is all about. So with that said, get comfortable and get cozy and join me for this reading of I, You, We. I, You, we. I said you had to do it. You said you didn't want to. We talked about it and we agreed that maybe I could help. I said you were wrong. You insisted you were right. We held each other's hand and right and wrong disappeared. I began crying. You began crying too. We embraced, and between us grew a flower of peace. How I love this mystery called we. Where does it come from? Out of thin air? I thought about this mystery, and I realized something. We must be love's favorite child, because until I reach out for you, we is not even there. It arrives on the wings of tenderness. It speaks through our silent understanding. When I laugh at myself, it smiles. When I forgive you, it dances in jubilation. So we is not a choice anymore. Not if you and I want to grow with one another. We unites us, increases our strength. It picks up our burden when you and I are ready to let it fall. The truth is that you and I would have given up long ago, but we won't let us. It is too wise. Look into your hearts, it says. What do you see? Not you and I, but only we. Okay, so Michael Jackson is killing me with this quasi-wedding vow poem or essay. What is this, Michael? No. So listen, I actually have so many reactions to this. I don't even know where to begin. My first thought, of course, was, who is she, Michael? Who is she? No, just like a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, I don't remember, there was another episode in which I had a meltdown about the women in Michael's life. And I will try not to replicate that. But my goodness, this is so beautiful. This piece, this concept is so beautiful. And there's so much we can say about this. First of all, it obviously, to me, first go out, it reads romantic. It just does. It feels like a wedding vow. Honestly, fans around the world, have you borrowed from this for wedding vows? Because it could be. It's beautiful. This idea of a full commitment to another person, this idea that you become someone else. There's this new entity that forms when you love someone. That's called a we, and it has an interest not always in the individual, but in the partnership itself. God, how cool. I mean, obviously, this is something people talk about. This isn't like a groundbreaking concept, but the way he phrases this is fascinating to me, and the way he breaks it down is fascinating to me as well. So, of course, my first thought is, this is romantic. This is romantic as hell. And Michael, who is she? Tell us who she is. I just need names. I just need to know. I need to know so I can properly digest it and move on. Okay, I'm really going to stop. So thinking about this first from a romantic perspective, without knowing who inspired this and putting that aside, we can still see within this a certain level of, I think, emotional maturity and awareness about relationships. Now, granted, I want to add that I do not think this needs to be about a romantic partnership at all. I think it is, but I don't think it needs to be. I also found myself thinking about friendship as I read this, and the push and pull of friendship, and how A commitment to the friendship can be what keeps people long-standing friends for a long time. I mean, friendship is difficult to sustain for a lot of people, just as romantic relationships are. So the tenets here of thinking about the partnership, not just the individuals within it, absolutely applies to really any kind of relationship. This could apply to family relationships. This could apply to a relationship. I mean, something else I thought about is that this could apply to his relationship with his own creativity, with his own artistic force. It could also be commentary on the collective of our relationships to one another in the world, and how a fundamental focus on what unites us and the common experience of being human can carry with us. So I just want to throw out there, I did think of a lot of different things, but come on, we, it's gotta be about a woman. It's gotta be, right? All right, so let's break this down a little bit more directly here. He starts with something that feels specific. So I said you had to do it. You said you didn't want to. We talked about it and agreed that maybe I could help. What could that be? What could that be? That's so specific, right? I mean, it reads to me like this is a reference to a particular person or a particular situation, and how serious that need was for Michael's help, I don't know. And in what way could Michael help? I don't know. I mean, is it someone he knew and he was helping emotionally, that he was helping financially? You know, it could be anything. It could be lighthearted or it could be deeply serious. It all depends on the relationship. So it is specific and it sounds like it's geared toward a specific person or relationship, but it's general enough that we can all kind of put ourselves in it. And unfortunately, I don't think we have that many clues. So anything I guess would be pure conjecture, which I am not above, but I don't want to sink into the realms of my own twisted imagination. At least not in front of all of you. I said you were wrong and you insisted you were right. We held each other's hands and right and wrong disappeared. Now I like this because this isn't so specific, but it certainly is relatable. This idea of right and wrong when people argue, it took me a long time as an adult, I think, to learn that the right or wrong doesn't really matter when you're thinking in service of a relationship. Like, I don't need to have the last word, for example. I don't need to say everything I'm thinking or feeling. Because first of all, a lot of those things, when you're struggling and fighting with someone, a lot of those things are temporary anyway, not necessarily your truth, at least not for me. But something can be in the moment satisfying to say or release or whatever, but ultimately cause real harm to the relationship, not just the other person, but the relationship. So I do feel like learning how to hold that back so that the focus is on the relationship is sort of what he's talking about here. Like the right and wrong disappeared when we refocus on the relationship itself, on who we are together, who we become together, you know? I began crying, you began crying, we embraced, and between us grew a flower of peace. That's such a sweet phrasing, a flower of peace. But that's true, because doesn't it feel wonderful to have some kind of conflict and have it finally resolved? What's interesting is I did have this thought when I read this, but I guess I sort of pushed it away in my own mania about wondering who this was about. But I did have this thought, and I had it again reading this line, that like this could also be about a relationship with a family member or his family as a whole. I don't know. Based on the timeline of this being written and published, I don't know if that would be the case, because as far as everything I am aware of, everything I've read and learned, Michael really sort of grew distant from his family in the late 80s and 90s. So it seems unlikely. But for some reason, I thought about him recovering his relationship with certain family members and, finding a sense of healing and peace growing between them finally. And I don't know. I don't know why that came to mind, but I guess I'm thinking about the various conflicts of Michael's life and relationships in his life that were not easy. And so it's easy to say this was a romantic piece, and it does feel that way to me, honestly, but it really could be about any relationship, because the bottom line is that everything that requires a romantic relationship to work is essentially the same thing any intimate relationship would require, whether that is a family member or a friend or, somebody else. So anyway, I guess I'm still thinking through this, like, who is it? Who is it? Anyway. Okay, so I said everything I just said, right? But then let's look at this next paragraph. I love this mystery of we. When I think about it, we must be love's favorite child. Love's favorite child. Love as a concept, as a construct, as an experience, as a human experience to tap into. We, Michael and this woman, must be love's favorite child. That's beautiful. What a beautiful way to think about a relationship for him. I thought the line, we must be love's favorite child because until I reach out to you, we is not even there. That's an interesting line, because on one level, we could take that as, well, Michael is taking accountability in the relationship. Like, if you say until you reach out to me, you're kind of putting all of the onus on the other person to foster the connection in the relationship, right? So he's taking some responsibility and accountability by saying, until I reach out to you, it takes two of us. It takes me playing my part too, in order for we to arrive. On the other hand, how interesting when you think about Michael having relationships with women in which we know, per his own words, and per just everything you in any way invest in this aspect of Michael's life, we know, not I or you, but we, we know that Michael has, he was pretty secretive about his relationships, and he was incredibly famous. So his relationships kind of had to be very quietly kept in order to both protect himself and his own privacy, but also the other person. It's also possible, and this is something we really don't know. We don't know if this is true or not, but it's also possible he had some commitment issues and fears attached to relationships for any number of completely valid reasons. Either way, while this in one hand presents Michael as being accountable and responsible in the relationship, it also kind of implies a power dynamic on some level, And trust me, I can already hear people thinking I am overreading this, and I might be. But all we have to work with are these words, right? So what do they mean? What are they telling us? Let's analyze them to death and figure it out. So he says, until I reach out for you, we is not even there. And then he goes on to, it arrives on wings of tenderness, and it speaks through our silent understanding. So again, this idea that the concept of we, or not so much the concept of we, but the reality of we, the reality of once you are in a relationship with a person, there is a third entity, and it is the relationship itself. It's not just these two individuals. This third entity, this we, exists, and it is grounding, kind of like a tree that is rooting you to the ground. That's the way I interpret what he says here. And so when it speaks through the silent understanding, it's showing the strength of those roots. It's showing the strength that keeps the couple or keeps the people involved so rooted to each other so they don't lose sight of what matters most to them. And it makes me think about when relationships don't work. And again, this is romantic, but also, friendships and relationships with family members or whatever. And it makes me wonder if sometimes, if you look at those relationships that don't work, how often is the root of the reason they stopped working that at least one of the people, maybe both, but at least one of the people involved forgot about the we, you know? Like if you start thinking more for or about yourself and not thinking through how your individual actions impact the we and what the we needs to survive and be nurtured, I don't know. That's why I said these could be great wedding vows, because the root of the whole piece is that there is this third entity when you join forces with a person in any kind of relationship. There's always opportunities to be selfish in any kind of relationship, or to put your own, needs first in any kind of relationship. And sometimes, we need to learn how to put ourselves first. Sometimes that is necessary. I'm not discounting that. But relationships require a sense of thinking about the other person, because if you don't think about the other person, you certainly can't think about the we. So like, what will help maintain or sustain a relationship in a healthy way that will not cause harm to one or both of you? Like thinking about that rather than the immediate thing that you want or need in that moment. I guess I'm thinking about things like infidelity or whatever. Relationships are complicated, so I'm not going to speak on that too much. And plus, who am I to judge? The point more being, this is a really grounding perspective to have. And then he says this, which I love. He says, so we is not a choice anymore. Not if you and I want to grow with one another. So it is a choice, but it's not a choice. I think what he's saying is you can't claim to want to grow with someone and then ignore the we. You have to actively adapt to it in some way. He goes on for the rest of this paragraph, and then it's the conclusion of the essay, talking about we as a pillar of the strength in a relationship. When you or I would have let it fall, we is still there. It's too wise and it knows more. I just think this is fascinating, because to me, there's a couple of things to consider here. In order for you to have that level of faith in the we, you have to know why you're in it. Like, what are you getting out of this relationship? What are you getting out of this friendship? Like, why is it important to maintain? We go through our whole lives and we have all kinds of relationships that come and go. And I'm sure many of us would agree that the majority of the relationships that go, we're glad they went. Like we look back and we're like, thank God. I think that the majority of us would feel that way, right? So the way I read this is almost like, in order to hold on to the we, to allow the we to have such strength that it can carry the I and the you through anything, there has to be a strong understanding as to why that we matters so much and what that we is really doing and giving. It also makes me wonder if a we is an inevitable thing, like if every relationship, every friendship, every whatever, there's a we, which involves some kind of set of rules or expectations to maintaining that relationship or a certain level of nurturing. Or if the we is only formed, like the true we is only formed when it comes to those longer terms and more seriously committed relationships. I don't know, I'm really thinking through that for myself. Like, on one hand, I think it's an automated thing. If you enter into a relationship or a friendship, it's inevitable. Like, there's instantly, the moment you decide you want to be involved with a person in some way, you have a we forming, and it's this tiny little bud that's waiting to bloom. But I also could see not thinking of it that way and thinking of a we as this final formation of a more serious partnership or friendship or whatever. I would love to know Michael's perspective on that. And I have to say, this is again, this is a man who is frequently regarded as not being very experienced with relationships, with not having a huge open public history with relationships. And yet I think he has a sense of wisdom about them that would suggest otherwise. And I mean, I don't think I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe I am. But I would love to find other men that think about relationships this way. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm not. But I think that this was a man. This was a man who wrote this at some point in his 20s, possibly the very early 30s. And he had this perspective on a relationship. I find that impressive and interesting, especially for someone people often don't acknowledge that side of him that much. I don't know. There's a million ways you could read it. I read it as romantic. And so I want to know, who was the we that eventually slipped away, And it makes me sad to think about, because these are beautiful sentiments to express about a person, no matter the relationship. They're beautiful. And assuming it is a romantic relationship, it doesn't seem like it worked out long term. And makes me a little sad for Michael, that he could have felt this strongly about someone and it didn't manifest in a longer term commitment. But he was up against quite a lot, as would anyone who would be with him, would be up against quite a lot. His life was very difficult. So I really enjoyed reading this piece, and I tried so hard not to become unhinged. I tried. I always wonder, because I don't, I see the demographics of people who listen to this podcast. It's mostly women. It's like 95 or 98% women or something, which, like, of course it is. But I often think, like, do you all relate when I struggle this way? Or are you just waiting for me to calm down and just have a serious conversation? Because I'll tell you, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it is difficult. I am still a girl at heart. Needless to say, I enjoyed this piece, and I appreciated the opportunity to reflect not only on Michael and what led him to write this, but the actual sentiments in the piece itself. Like I said, I am impressed by the emotional intelligence here. And I think that this is like a really good reminder, honestly, for all of us. Even if we're great in our relationships, even if we have all kinds of friendships and we've had wonderful marriages or whatever the case, we can all be reminded of what it takes to give and love and support that forms between us and another person. So thank you, Michael, for the wonderful lesson. And I say that totally sincerely. I really enjoyed this piece a lot. All right. So with that said, I am going to end here. Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed being back here with you again, and I look forward to reading and discussing more of Dancing the Dream next week. Until then, have a wonderful week and weekend, and I hope that no matter where you are in life right now, whether you are in a place of great happiness or in a place of struggle, I hope that you continue to feel the love that is out there for you in the universe, and that you have a we, even if your we is with the greater world and universe as a whole, because we could all stand to think about each other a little bit more. All right, let me end this. I will talk to you all soon. Take care.